few years, there seems to have been so many leadership scandals in the church. So many significant leaders who've been exposed for wrongdoing, whether it's an abuse of power, an abuse of wealth, or some sort of immorality. It's also worth noting that leadership scandals are not isolated to the church world, of course. There's been plenty of scandals in the corporate world, and with them, the call to higher levels of accountability. It's like society is waking up. We no longer tolerate hypocrisy and cover-ups, particularly by those who hold positions of power. Of course, in all this, the church is held to higher account, largely because it preaches a different message. In church, we talk about living a higher way, the way of Jesus. So when we don't see it practiced, our anger, our confusion, and our disappointment feels greater. So how are we to respond? Here's some thoughts I've had just reflecting on this issue with the Holy Spirit in the past few years. The first one is to remind ourselves that we're following Jesus and not people. We're made in God's image, supposed to reflect God, not our leaders. And there's something within the humanity that tends to enjoy putting people on pedestals. As a pastor and a speaker, I can see how this happens. You see someone at a distance and they look so good, so articulate. But when you get closer to them, you realize, you know what? They're only human. What I saw was a bit of an illusion. We're called to fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. And it means that if we do that, we're going to be disappointed when leaders fail, but we're not going to be devastated. The second thought that I had is that when we see people fail, it gives us an opportunity to reflect on our own failures. Again, Jesus seemed to refer to this tendency in humanity to see someone else's problem but not see our own. He said, "Why do you notice the speck in somebody else's eye and not see the plank in your own?" The truth is that we are accountable for our own walk. We're accountable to God for what we do. And so often it's easy to point the finger at somebody else when actually we fail in the same way. The third idea is to extend grace and forgiveness to others. We're called to forgive people as Christ forgave us. Now, that's not always easy to do. It's a process, but it's at the core of Christianity is grace, forgiveness, no condemnation. As we've been forgiven, so we forgive others. Now, when we extend grace, we don't lose truth. Truth confronts reality. Truth sees it for what it is and then puts boundaries in place. But while there is truth, there is also grace. And this is the example that Jesus gave us to follow. Finally, when we see people fail, it's a good reminder that if we ourselves aspire to some form of leadership, that we need to deal with our baggage. We need to deal with our own sin and our own selfishness, because as we lead, we exert influence. Now, that influence can be positive, but it also can be negative. We carry our own wounding into our leadership. And Jesus made a very strong point that if we cause vulnerable people to stumble, it's like we deserve to have a millstone around our neck. He was using hyperbole, of course, but the point is that when we adopt a role of leadership, we're called to a higher responsibility because of the influence we have. Let the failures of others not be a reason to put people down, but to fix our eyes on Jesus and to call our own lives to account. Hey, thanks for listening to Everyday God Conversations today. If you'd like to know more about having conversations with God, check out godconversations.com.